Hello there, welcome back to my channel. This is episode 6 of the Lessons I Must Learn series, and today I'm talking about boundaries. Establishing them, respecting them. I think for me, the starting point is just coming to this realization that I do sometimes maybe overstep on people's boundaries, or rather I have in the past. And I just think, finally accepting that as my reality has made me want to know, moving forward, how can I also, respect people's boundaries, and also just maybe understanding what are some of the things that sometimes cause us to overstep on people's boundaries. And I might just be looking down a bit. I'll just be referring to a few notes that I made and just, points I don't want to forget. But I think the starting point can be, what are boundaries? And I found this definition online, which I think is really good. I think I'll just put it on the screen, but maybe I'll just paraphrase it at the moment. And basically, it is just saying how boundaries are like the lines we put around ourselves, so that we are able to interact comfortably with others. So it's just like, okay, you're protecting yourself to a certain extent so that I think it's just ascertaining what is safe for you as you interact with people in different capacities, what is safe for you physically, emotionally, and all that kind of stuff. And then, the different types of boundaries. I probably can't exhaust all of them, but I'll just mention a few that I came across. So one can be a physical boundary, which can do, like for me, I think the best example is, imagine you're meeting someone for the first time, and I always I don't think people should assume you can just hug anyone, especially the first time you meet them. So for you, that can be a physical boundary that, alright, my only way of saying hello, especially to someone I'm just meeting, is probably a handshake, or even just statements. I could literally just be like, hi, nice to meet you, and life moves on. So a boundary in a physical sense could be that one, that I just don't like people hugging me. I prefer maybe a handshake, or just speak it, or whatever it is. Another one can be an emotional boundary, which I think sometimes I have been maybe someone who oversteps it. And I think a good example is, like, let's say trauma dumping on someone. So let's say you're just talking with a friend, and you're literally maybe catching up and all, and then maybe sometimes I think it's so easy to maybe forget that some things we share can be emotionally taxing, and so you're very tempted to just go ahead and just pour out your soul and heart. And I think that can be very dangerous to someone who probably is not in that capacity to just accept that kind of information. Someone might never even want you to speak to them about it, not even because they don't love you or whatever. It's just that they really do not want to maybe hear a story relating to a certain topic because it triggers them because of one reason or another. So that can be an example of an emotional boundary that someone can have. Then we also have social boundaries, which are basically like meant to look out for your social comfort. And for me, I think this could play out in different situations. For instance, if you're just in a social setting and you find that sometimes maybe someone would want to put you in a position where it's like, oh, you must mingle with people or something of the sort. Another social boundary could even do with time. So let's say you're supposed to meet up, and then someone has is habitually a latecomer. So every time it's like you're literally overstepping on people's time and stuff like that. So that can be a social boundary that like, I am only available for maybe this particular time if we are meeting out to do this particular thing, but then after that I'm not available. And you shouldn't make someone feel bad because they couldn't extend, yet maybe they had only planned for the agreed time, so something of the sort. And you'll find that there are so many different types of boundaries. That can be even is it religious, spiritual, like it could be so much that I think that would be a whole topic in itself if I just talked about the different types of boundaries. So now that you have like a bit of a picture on that, you would wonder, okay, like, so how come sometimes we maybe find ourselves overstepping on people's boundaries? And one that I came across, like one point, is that it stems from also us ourselves not being able to establish firm boundaries with people. Whenever you allow room for flexibility, I feel like it's not so clear as to whether this is a boundary, this is not, because it's like, okay, so I could push it and it's okay. Literally, there are no consequences to maybe overstepping your boundary. So because you operate like that, you're tempted to believe that other people also operate in the same way, and as such you just cannot understand that someone cannot be flexible with their boundaries, because you're like, but I would have accommodated this if it were me and stuff like that. So again, yeah, that is you, this is another person. It's not always about what you would do and expecting that this is the exact same thing that someone else will do. So just yourself not being able to make clear and firm boundaries with others can be like something that leads you to overstepping on other people's boundaries. Another thing can just be, I don't know if I can call it influence or just your surroundings or where you are, but there's like an example of, for instance, at your workplace, you're someone who is probably, I don't know, project manager, like something, just a role, a managerial role where you may be in charge of overseeing people and how they're doing things and stuff like that. So when it comes to such roles, you find that most of the time you're not really so concerned about, let's say, personal boundaries of people or whatever. It's just that work must be done and this is the way that things need to operate in. And you see, because you're so used to people always doing whatever you're telling them, it can translate in your personal life, and yeah, you just find that someone would be like no, and it becomes like a bit difficult for you to navigate that situation because you're so used to people allowing, or rather just, yeah, basically in that particular sense, it will be like you'd be expecting people to, again, break, overstep, whatever, like allow you to overstep or just kind of isn't their, boundaries for you. So that's something else to note. So another thing that, relates to probably the first point is that there are no consequences when boundaries have been broken before. So now you think that it is always permissible to break them. And this could just, be a whole different point from you maybe not being able to establish like firm ones yourself. But it's like, okay, there's someone else who maybe stated this is their boundary, but then when you broke it, nothing happened to you, like you weren't even called out or anything, so you think it's permissible to do that. So that can lead to boundaries being overstepped. Then the other is also unclear boundaries, or where they haven't been communicated to you, because I feel like it's one thing to feel like this is a boundary I have, but it's another thing to communicate it to people clearly. And I think it's just important to communicate, because it's so hard sometimes to always just, I guess, make assumptions maybe based on how someone behaves and just be like, okay, maybe she looked uncomfortable, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Sometimes, like, it's just good to, I think it's always best to just communicate, like, bottom line, that's the point. Just communicate your boundaries, make sure they're clear. And I mean, if someone breaks them, always have consequences for that. So now that I've looked at like maybe some of the reasons why we end up breaking, overstepping boundaries, I did have a moment I was thinking there are certain situations which for me I'm still 50-50. So this is just a thought I'm putting out there, and maybe you could let me know what you think about it, or what would you think would be an appropriate thing in that situation. So you find sometimes that people do experience different mental health stresses, issues, problems, and sometimes they might enforce maybe some boundaries in that time that you may be feeling like, maybe this is a good time to overstep. So I'm usually 50-50 about this, because it's just like one of those things. I'm just like, I'm not sure what the right approach is. But say you have this friend who hasn't been, let's say, in touch for a minute, you're usually maybe very close, you interact often, but then you can just tell maybe, in this particular point, something has definitely changed. And at some point they've even communicated like, oh, I'm not in a good mental space right now, I can't speak to you and all. And you ask them, can I visit you? And then they say no. But then maybe it's like a week, it's like 2 weeks later, it's a month, you still are not sure if things are better. Like, do you think in that particular situation, it would be okay to just go visit them despite them saying, okay, don't come visit me, or just, I don't want to see anyone in this particular point? Do you think there's like a reasonable time to just wait it out? And then when it gets to a certain time, it's like, okay, maybe this is a bit too long, let me just go and see like she's okay. Like, doesn't matter that this is what she communicated as maybe a boundary for this particular period. So those are some of, like, that's like a situation usually I don't know, because I usually imagine in my case, I do not know if I would really appreciate a gesture of just someone coming to me randomly, popping up, just because I'm like, I told you not to come. But I've also seen people who have appreciated such gestures from their friends. Like, someone was literally, maybe saying they were having a depressive episode, they couldn't do anything, and then their friends would come over, literally maybe clean the house for them, prepare a meal, wash their clothes, something of that sort, and they really appreciated such. So I don't know, like, for me that's just still something I'm really, like, I guess, thinking about a lot, and maybe this is my call to go and read more about it and see if, like, maybe navigating boundaries in such situations when there are, potential stressors and just a lot of very heavy and deep issues or struggles that people are going through. Alright, I've also remembered just some other boundaries, like maybe a type or example I want to give. So also financial boundaries, I think are usually, like, sometimes maybe very tough for people, and especially because maybe sometimes you just feel guilty after establishing that particular boundary. So maybe someone would like some money from you and you're just like, you're not in a position to do so, and then maybe the person wanted money for a certain thing that you think, okay, maybe it's more serious than me wanting to buy myself the next perfume bottle, but then what if this has been a recurring situation, so that could also be something to just, I guess, remember, like, as a type of boundary that exists. And even just for social, I just remembered like another example which to me I feel like is a social boundary I have, but then also sometimes I feel like some people just think it's just a flexible one. So I don't know how clear I can be about it, but for me, like, let's say phone calls, I absolutely hate them. I hate phone calls. I just hate them. I just do not appreciate someone making a phone call, especially if you've not even sent a text prior, or if you've not arranged to call me prior. Like, that is something for me that I really do not like. And I do feel like I have been flexible in terms of maybe with people I'm close with, but then it's just not for everyone. And if I tell you I do not like phone calls and you want to say you do not like texting, I am sorry, then we won't talk. Like, some of these things, just, I think they should, like, if you really want to talk to me and I've told you this is my boundary, just text me. If you do not like texting, and that's the only way I like to be communicated to, I guess we are not willing to get into any form of communication, whatever it is. Though now I'm also just thinking, like, do people at some point also compromise on their boundaries, maybe when you get a partner or something of the sort? Anyway, I don't know. I just think there are some boundaries that are just non-negotiable, and I think maybe there are some that are just okay, maybe we can allow it. So I feel like you see the way, let's say you can, okay, let me give an example of a hula hoop. So you can have like a really wide one and a really small one. So I feel like the non-negotiable boundaries are usually maybe like that tiny hula hoop, like it's just that small space that is just so sacred and safe. And then okay, like there are also boundaries maybe they're like a bit isn't out, and so like maybe they're like that big hula hoop, and in that, sorry, so yeah, there's that big hula hoop which is like a bit isn't out, and you know, like there's like maybe a bit more, it's like there's a wider circumference or whatever, like so like there's maybe a bit more room between that larger hula hoop and the tinier one, meaning that maybe that space, it's like okay, maybe some people can maybe fall on it a little and you'd still maybe not feel very exposed or like unsafe. But then I feel like once that encroaches into like, you know, your tiniest, like that hula hoop space, I feel like maybe that's where the danger is. I don't know, it's just my thoughts. Yeah, and basically another thing I wanted to share is you find that sometimes the most, like the people who I guess break or overstep on our boundaries the most are people who are usually closest to us. Could be family, if you're close to your family, could be friends. And I think in the sense of sometimes it's just that we see boundaries as, I guess, perception of boundaries. I think a lot of people see boundaries as just like such a cruel way to cut me off, or it's just like that denied access to maybe some parts of you is not taken well and is interpreted to maybe she doesn't really love me as much. I think it's equated to that. So I think that's just maybe a perception I'd adjust to also, you know, deviate away from, because it's not accurate. I feel like if you love someone, you'll respect their boundaries, and even if you love yourself, like you'll also make boundaries that keep you safe in your interactions. Ultimately, I think once everyone's boundaries are clearly communicated and like the respect is mutual, you respect mine, I respect yours, I feel like it makes for such amazing interactions. And I think that's a lesson I must learn, you know, like that respecting people's boundaries is also on my end an act of love, and even me establishing my own is an act of love. And you know, especially if I feel like some things are like literally this is a boundary that must be respected, I should also not fear communicating it and just being firm about it, and this is my boundary, and you know, following through. Like if there's a consequence, it's like, please, I do not like you doing this. If you do it again, I just don't think this can happen, or I could interact with you in this sense. Yeah, like I feel like we should just be clear about it, communicate your boundaries, respect other people's boundaries. So yeah, that's the lesson I must learn. I must say, I feel like my thoughts have been all over the place, but I hope you've like kind of gotten and understood some of the things I was trying to convey. And yeah, I hope like this will be a good year, like of just interacting with people comfortably and safely, just because, you know, we are clear on what our boundaries are and we're respecting that. And honestly, I'm really sorry to people whose boundaries I have crossed. I thought I would be I don't know if it's brave or whatever enough to maybe share some of those examples, but I'm just like, oh no, I really don't want to give specific examples, but I have realized cases where I have overstepped and just thought that, you know, I'll just get over it, like, you know, something of the sort, and that's not right. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Please share your thoughts on me on this topic. I would really love to know more about it. I think this could potentially be like, it could potentially have a part 2, because I feel like there are so many things we could discuss when it comes to boundaries, and even maybe just how do you firmly communicate your boundary, like, you know, what do you say, and you know, like how do you follow through your consequence to like disrespecting or, you know, someone overstepping your boundary. Like it could be something that we can talk of each and every day or whatever, but I just wanted to share it out here just as something that I've actively been thinking about and just wanting, you know, to do better. And as always, there's always a lot of information online. You can also just, you know, Google, just maybe try and understand a few things here and there. I mean, of course, take everything with a grain of salt, because unless you're getting the information from an expert or whatever, but I think it does really help to just gain perspective and see that, okay, maybe I could approach things a little differently here and there. And yeah, I think that's it. Next week the video that will be going up is our vlog, so that will be fun. On that video I also mentioned that I'd want to do something on maybe Valentine's. Like, I don't know if you guys want like a video where I suggest places you could check out for Valentine's, because, you know, it's literally Feb right now, like literally tomorrow in a few hours, whatever. So yeah, let me know if you'd like to have like a Valentine's guide, or like, I mean, restaurants you could visit or something of the sort. I might do a short or just a long form video, but then just depends on if people want it or not, and maybe even a blog post. I don't know, I might just do it because I want to. If people don't, I don't know, but we'll figure it out, I guess. So see you next week. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you enjoy this video and find it useful, please share with your friends, your circle, and see you next week. Bye bye.